Here's what PopTech feels like. It feels like a really good conference for an alien to attend if you were like, here's like what matters right now.
Hey everyone, I just got back from PopTech, and even though this is the third time I've attended this conference, I can still barely describe it.
PopTech is the coolest conference you've never heard of.
So I've invited Sarah Rose Siskind and Kwaku Aning to help share some of the great stories and great vibes from this year's conference. PopTech bills itself as a curator of what's next and always features wild entrepreneurs and changemakers. This year we heard from people trying to de-extinct the woolly mammoth, to put giant umbrellas in the atmosphere to cool the earth below, on why Taiwan and Tibet are key to the tech industry, and Sarah regaled us with her crazy experiment to train an AI on everything her baby is hearing from inside the womb.
My project is called FetusGPT, and it's inspired by the fact that I'm 7.5 months pregnant and terrified.
Sarah is a science and comedy writer and the founder of Hello SciComm, which is a STEM communications agency, and Kwaku is a professional connector and tech consultant, or as Sarah likes to call him,
the homecoming king of PopTech. He is like the quarterback.
Wow,
Everyone wants him at their table.
I'm more of like the AV guy, where people are like, this isn't working. And that guy's really popular because you're like, oh, he's gonna get the Wi-Fi up. I'm more of that person.
That is not true. You have like 10 people following you at any given moment.
Okay. One, I feel a little seen. And two, it's not 10 people following. It's not like I'm like the Pied Piper. I'm like, come this way for a good time.
A bit.
You know what I mean?
Dan knows. Dan affirms.
Thanks, Dan.
No, I mean, look, man, you draw a crowd in the best of ways.
You're a star at PopTech. You make it what it is. You make it the fun, authentic vibes I was talking about.
All right. So, Sarah, I think you gave one of the most memorable and the funniest talks of this year, certainly. And it kind of, in a weird way, relates to an alien behavior. I don't know. Can you tell us about the project that you're giving birth to right now?
It is amazing how many times I get that feedback, Dan, of like, this would be good for aliens, whatever you're doing. Okay, so my project is called FetusGPT, and it's a project inspired by the fact that I'm 7.5 months pregnant and terrified. And I realized at 22 weeks pregnant that my fetus could hear the world around it. And because I'm weird, instead of being like, oh, I'm going to be a mom, that's cool. Instead, I was like, oh, what a clean data set. I could totally collect all of this data, and so I started recording my world so that I could train an AI on the exact same data my fetus is being trained on and do a perfect, unprecedented one-to-one comparison of their language acquisition. Now, it's not perfect, actually, because the fetus is embodied and it has like smells and food and a body and stuff like that. But it's a pretty good comparison because unlike us who are taking in lots more visual information and information on other indices, the fetus is mostly taking in just audio. So I've been training this really interesting AI, which, by the way, I have a GPT baby daddy. His name is Daniel Schiffman. He's an NYU coding professor at Tisch, actually, and like a viral YouTuber, coding legend. He created this infrastructure, this like coding, this LLM architecture. So that's a large language model like ChatGPT. But this one is not trained on anything other than the sounds and the transcript of my world. So ChatGPT has been trained on just petabytes at this point of data from Wikipedia and Reddit and all over. Imagine if it was literally just trained on your world for the past like 3 or 4 months. That's what FetusGPT is trained on. And it also, so there's like 2 elements of the experiment. It's the sounds it makes and the words it produces. So the sounds it makes are much more complex. It's a machine that's teaching itself how to speak in this sort of babble that sounds like human talk, like sort of like when a baby babbles and is like trying to sound like a human.
So basically, you've been wearing an always-on 24/7 audio recorder. Since your baby was 22 weeks old, right? And so the recorder can hear everything that you're saying at home when you go out, like everything.
Everything.
Right? Everything.
listening.
Were you wearing
right
that at
now.
the conference?
Yes, I was, which is why I
Good
have
to
a
know.
perfect.
Good to know.
I don't use it. Like, I genuinely don't use it unless I would like ask somebody. However, one of the things I did present at the conference is that Daniel occasionally will see the summary of my day, because this is a software meant for like clearly for conferences and like work meetings. And so it'll like summarize my day as like sorry, like breakfast complaints, invoicing clients, relationship crisis.
Yeah.
and then like lemur self-medication was one transcript, because I was watching YouTube videos about the way lemurs know to use certain ants as insecticide. And so it just kind of combines the transcript of my day into one insane sounding meeting. And occasionally these like two AI researchers that I'm working with will like see these transcripts, and it's very embarrassing, but I have a weird life.
Is there a Heisenberg uncertainty principle here, where the act of observation is messing up the thing that's happening in the first place?
Absolutely. Like I was saying on stage, I've stopped swearing so much because I know the recorder is listening. And so I am already censoring myself.
Is the goal to eventually introduce like a natural language processing aspect to this, and then have your baby be able to interact with baby GPT?
To be honest, this is really weird. I haven't really thought too much about why I'm doing this. Like, I'm clearly doing this because I'm terrified about having a child. And this is like a fun, weird, unprecedented thing that I think just gets me excited about parenthood. But on a deeper level, I think that what inspired me was just like talking with my nieces and nephews, and the way that my nephew just very confidently says things like, I'm a boy, so I do karate and makeup. And just like, he's so sure that's what it means to be a 5-year-old boy, is like, you do karate and you do makeup, and like that's his job. And it's like, clearly he's been exposed to those two things, because like he couldn't list, I do insurance fraud or something like that, because he doesn't know what that is yet. He hasn't even heard of insurance fraud yet. And so he has only what he's been trained on, which is amongst the soup of things, karate and makeup. And I just think like that's so fascinating to go back to a time when your data pool was so limited, and yet you're extrapolating. And humans are really good at extrapolating from little data. AI, not so much. And so this experiment actually is really inspiring about humans, because we're so much more efficient with data, and we're so much more efficient with energy. So it's very inspiring in that sense. And I do think, yeah, eventually it'd be great to see my son talking with the AI version of my son, and have like a real, I don't know, sort of Yorick in Hamlet moment. That might be kind of interesting. And maybe just get, other people excited about AI who don't realize how cool it is.
Have you heard of Storyfile? Do you know about this?
No, what is it?
It was originally created by these researchers at USC to record Holocaust victims. And then they took it and they turned it into a tool that people use to capture personality, data, that sort of thing, voice from aging parents.
Oh,
so that
that's
you can
great.
actually talk with them after they're gone. And so when I heard about your project originally, I was like, oh, you're doing something, but you're going to basically capture your entire, if you want to, presence with your unborn child to them being born. So you would have all this data afterwards. I mean, there it's a little more detailed. They like record videos. So if you look it up, there's like a William Shatner demo of it. And so you ask William Shatner these questions and he answers them. But all this was before all of this generative AI stuff, Sora 2, any of that. So the raw data that you have, you're creating like this lifelong ragbot for your child.
I'm obsessed with this concept. As a matter of fact, I just pulled out these 2 books that are from behind me on my bookshelf, that are my parents' life stories, So for a year, I signed them up for this service called Storyworth, where they would just answer questions every week via email, and it prints them into a book. But I have the PDF version too, even more importantly, so that I can query it one day, because my mother was 42 when she had me, and I'm 33, and I'm a little worried that my parents won't have a lot of time with my child. My husband is also 62. And so I feel, a little nervous about this. And AI is a type of permanence, it's a type of immortality. Of course, that's super dicey. Like, I am worried about AI thwarting the grief process a little bit, thinking like
Yep.
way down the road.
Hmm.
I think that's a real concern, especially for somebody like me who can be a little exuberant. However, I think the gains probably outweigh the risks with it, because there's just so much knowledge that gets lost with generations. Like my my grandparents, fought in World War II, and there's like so much information that I wish that I had collected from them. Just the little slices of life aspects. Because, there's a theory of history that history is just way too indexed on public records, and we don't have enough like lasting information that was written down about the slices of life. And with AI, I think we have a much better opportunity to remember how people's lives were in the sort of like littler moments that don't get as many sort of like public records. So this project FetusGPT is like funny sort of future looking project, but there's also just treasure troves of, past looking projects to
Yeah.
better, remember our past. Can I just like, why did you just send me a picture of body wash via text?
Because, okay, I mean, if we're getting into this, I wasn't going to make a big deal about it, but if we're getting into this,
Why?
when
This
I
is so
saw you at the conference, you're like, you smell really good. I'm like, oh,
you
I'm using
did
the
you
body
did
wash
so.
in the Airbnb. And your exact words to me were, send me a picture of the body
Why
wash.
now? Why now, Kwaku?
Because I'm
It
talking to you now and I'm remembering. I took a
this
picture of it before I left. I saw you and I'm like, let me send it now before I forget.
you know, this is like I for a split second I thought that this was like coming from inside the home. This was like you being like
Well, I'm in
I
your bathroom. Is this weird?
it sort of looks like my bathroom, but like this is so distracting. Like, what, you have no sense of timing, Kwaku, with your
Wow.
okay,
I,
all
I,
right,
I
sorry,
apparently
Dan.
I do when it
No.
comes to.
I just let that be a
I
lesson
didn't
to
think you
you.
were looking at your phone.
I'm trying to know where to go right now.
I'm sorry, Dan.
Um, hey, you don't
Well,
apologize.
you just have this simple transition between the Holocaust stories,
Mm,
Kwaku sending me a picture
mhm.
of body wash from inside my home,
You didn't have to mention that.
and commemorating the past with AI. Just, like,
I
you
mean,
know,
honestly, that's basically what it means to like scroll social media, right? It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that
it's
is
just all
true.
Exactly.
there. It's a slot machine, and like so
It is such a roller coaster.
yeah.
Like, it is ridiculous that, because I have like basically two two types of things that I follow on Instagram. It's like puppies and kittens, and like the updates of hostages in Israel. And it's literally just like updates from the worst thing ever to puppies and kittens, and then the worst thing ever, and then puppies and kittens. And I need to like unfollow everything and just go back to family. Like, I should go, Facebook was, it's interesting the way social media is like either like your friends and family, or like just the worst internet, reaction videos ever. And we really should go back to like just close personal networks, like what Facebook was originally intended
I
for.
mean, I think a lot of people have. I think that isn't that the WhatsApp group chats that a lot of us have
Yeah.
retreated to. And give that baby a couple years, and you'll be in some horrible ones with like like you're the entire first grade class, and
Oh,
it'll just never
yeah.
stop.
Oh,
But
yeah. I forgot that's why we all left those. Oh, I
Speaking of
remember
pop
now.
tech,
speaking of pop tech,
speaking of pop tech,
what struck you, Kwaku? Bring us back.
Pablo's had this line: "Don't give our attention to what seeks us; give it to what we seek."
Oh,
And
that's
it
great.
feels like in a way that's what we were discussing now. all of these things that demand our attention through social media versus the things that we want to give our attention to, and how do we create that balance? And so a
Yeah.
lot, Sarah, of what you've mentioned today is sort of, one, your obvious curiosity and love of technology, specifically with AI, but science in general. And then also a little bit of your fear of mortality and your fear of becoming a mom, not only because of the age gap, between people that you love in your life, but also there's something about having children. I'm sure Dan can talk about this as well, where you have a larger sense of your mortality. Obviously, I don't know what it's like to be a woman to have something growing inside you, but there's that piece. But then when that child comes into the world, you're seeing them go through all of these things, and it really starts to cement what your place is in society versus how you see the world or how you view the world. And in that way, I view our relationship, Sarah, like two seventh graders just going back and forth. But it's harder to ignore that when you just show up at PopTech with this 7-month child just kicking around in your belly.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't warn you about that.
I didn't send the right text message. But to Pablo's point,
Let me give a little context for who Pablos
yeah,
is
who
and what
Pablos
yes, you should do that. You should do that.
So Pablos Holman, he's been on this show before. He published a book called Deep Futures. He runs a VC firm also called Deep Futures. He's an inventor. He's a hacker. He's like, I don't know, a crazy, interesting person who's lived like 12 lives already.
And my neighbor.
And your neighbor, most importantly. And so he gave a talk, the very opening talk on day one, basically trying to like get us out of any feelings of doom that we might have. I don't know why anyone would be feeling any sort of doom right now or dread. But the point was, pick something that you really, really care about. And we did an exercise where we wrote down a bunch of things that we cared about on little sticky notes. And then he said, okay, force rank them, put the very thing you care about the most on top. And he said, now, and this is going to be hard, take all the other sticky notes, priorities, and throw them away. And just focus on that one thing and try to make progress in that one thing. And to your point about, the things that are trying to take our attention versus what we want to make progress on, like spend a little less time scrolling and a little more time on that one and only one thing. He was trying to give people permission to not feel guilty that they can't fix all the world's problems, but they could fix one thing. If they really cared about, rescue dogs, they could work on rescue dogs. If they really care about, some aspect of climate change, they could work on that. But like, don't try to solve everything and just try to take action and not get lost in our phones and the other things that are, cloying for our attention. I thought it was a really nice way to kick off the event, and it sort of spoke to what we were sort of there for, which was to not just learn, but to like figure out what to do next.
It could not have been a better talk to start off with, because specifically of this case study he starts with, which was child mortality. And he starts off, the first column is life sucks. And he shows how horrible it is. There are like millions of children in the world who die before the age of 15. So that's the first column. The second column is, but it's getting better. And he talks about the insane, unbelievable reductions in childhood mortality over the past 100 years, let alone the past, since the dawn of man. And then the third column is, and it could be even better. And then he goes into the present data about, frankly, just how rare childhood mortality is in Europe and how much progress there is to go in Africa and Southeast Asia, and how many gains there are to be made, and frankly have been. And so it's sort of like future indicating. And so he has this 3-way Venn diagram. That's the world sucks, it's getting better, and it could be awesome. And it was so useful to put into perspective how we talk about problems, because so many talks can be mired in pessimism, doom and gloom, with no sense of perspective of the problem itself and how to get out of it. And so it was such a useful framework going forward.
Really, it's just managing your attention. We have a finite amount of it.
The effective altruist community has a lot of like interesting frameworks for thinking like, how many hours are you going to spend on something in an average length of a career? And it makes you try to think like, what's the most important thing I could be spending my time on? And it was interesting the way that like all of the problems I was writing down did not exactly line up with like what I do for a living, even though I get a lot of meaning out of STEM communications, which is what I do. The stuff I was writing down was a lot more like polarization as like a problem. Like that was the biggest thing I think I wrote down, because I think of it as like a problem that comes before other problems because it's
I
hard
wrote
to
down
solve.
civility. I think that was the number one thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
wrote
pretty
down.
close, I
Yeah.
think. It's just like it's hard to solve other big problems like cancer and climate change or whatever without having some kind of like common ground. And I was like, oh man, I am not helping.
I'm sure that's not true, actually.
Actually, I think that's totally false. Go ahead, Dan. I think she's helping a lot.
How?
Well,
With Fetus GPT?
Well, okay. Before we get into slagging on you, Dan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I thought it was very helpful to the prioritization, the force ranking exercise, and because I'm sort of in career transition a little bit myself right now, and like kind of coming full circle in my first career, which was in public radio and media, and as a journalist and a storyteller, and I saw on stage, not just in Pablos, but in basically every single speaker who was on stage, and I think the two of you as well, like incredible storytellers, and how important that is, and like if you can't, you could be the smartest person in the world, scientist, whatever, solving incredible problems. But if you can't communicate that clearly, you can't raise money, you can't inspire people. And so, as I look at like the things that I'm good at, storytelling is one of those things. And I'm like, this is actually a really, really important sort of meta skill across all these things. And so I think, Sarah, you work in storytelling. So that's why I'm, saying this maybe about the kind of work that I want to do, but I'm sure you're doing it as well. Like storytelling is really, really important.
Well,
So
yeah.
I wouldn't discount it.
Then a good segue for another talk at PopTech would be Beth Shapiro's talk about Colossal Biosciences and their efforts to combat biodiversity loss, which it was real. I thought just totally spellbinding.
Yeah, I interviewed Beth. This will be an upcoming episode of the show.
Cool.
She is the chief science officer of Colossal Bioscience. They're the ones who just brought back the dire wolf. There's some debate in the scientific community whether it's a gray wolf with 15 genetic edits or a dire wolf. I'm going to leave that debate aside, but they got a ton of press recently. But they focus on the reason they brought back the dire wolf, the reason they're working on woolly mammoths and the dodo, or as she hates it being called the dodo bird. They're focusing on charismatic animals. They literally put it that way because charismatic animals we care about. And this is not new. Like the World Wildlife Federation has done this for years with like cute little tiger puppies and things like that, and pandas. Yeah, something about the pandas and koalas and adorable things. And because they help tell stories, they help draw people in. But Beth, who before she got into science was training to be a broadcast journalist, is an incredible storyteller. So it's just another example that I saw on stage, but multiple times of like how powerful that is.
She's too good, because I was really tired that night at the speaker center, and I kept trying to leave, and she would just be like, well, that reminds me of the time I got arrested in Siberia. And I was like, what? And so I was up until like midnight or 1 a.m. and I am tired all the time. And because her stories, they are there to capture the popular imagination through charismatic animals so that we can combat something much more serious, which is biodiversity loss and then the sort of like ecosystem imbalance. And a lot of scientists, they're purists, and I get it. They spend their career trying to be taken seriously, and they have a lot of innate skepticism to popular science. But it's like that's what wins, though. Like that's what gets us to the moon. Yeah. And honestly, like a lot of science is publicly funded, so you might hate them, but the public is where you're gonna go.
And they lean into that Apollo mission, the going to the moon metaphor. It's all over their website. And my very opening question to her when I interviewed her was, is it at Colossal? Is it the journey? It was a very Oprah question. I said, is it the journey or is it the destination? And she said, because at the Apollo, the mission to the moon, we got all sorts of other inventions along the way.
And Tang,
and apparently hearing aids.
Is that what you're drinking?
I'm drinking a constant stream of electrolytes because this is exhausting making this human being. Keep going, Dan.
Fair.
So anyway, so we got all these things along the way, and we also got to the moon. I think Colossal would argue that it's both. She did argue that it's both. It is actually valuable to have predators that have long been extinct, that sometimes predators are actually what you need in an ecosystem to right the balance. Again, I don't know a ton about that either, but also along the way, they're spinning off lots of other companies. One example is they have a new company that I think they've spun out. They've created an exogenous womb. That could be a whole other company to like.
Oh my God! Yeah. So. Why? I'm too late.
Wait a minute. Can you explain more about that, because I'm not sure if I know what that means.
A way to give birth to something not inside of a host mammal.
She was worried
Mm.
about because the woolly mammoth has to be brought to term by an elephant. And so there's some she's also a big animal rights, animal welfare person. And so she was like, it'd be great if we had an external womb to, incubate these creatures. And I think that's great. And, a lot of women have been talking about how useful that would be for people who have issues with especially making a placenta, the only temporary organ that humans produce. And it's super complicated and completely not very well understood. It's probably a moonshot, a really big moonshot to do external wombs, which is too bad because there's a lot of miscarriages that could maybe be avoided. But it is also bioethics. What would the world look like if you had people like Elon Musk who don't even need the woman, to make the human being? What would the world look like? But it, for the short term, curing so many diseases, my God, it would be so cool. So you're right, Dan, there's so many things on the way. The other thing I was thinking, hearing her talk and just getting excited was what about lab grown meat? The way that they're creating new species, could some of that tech help with the current problem in lab grown meat? It feels like a lot of what they're doing with bioengineering might help all of these other subsidiary problems. And so for me, I'm going to answer for her and say journey rather than destination.
I mean, we're talking about the lab grown meat, and I need to look up this gentleman's name, but the guy who spoke on the second day,
Eben.
Oh yeah, Eben Bayer, he was so great.
He was so great. And before we get to Eben, I wanted to, because a big part of having Sarah on the podcast with me is for me to find moments to prove her wrong. And so when she said earlier that she doesn't feel that she's doing something meaningful, there's a lot of what she does on the communication front that is similar to what Beth does, which is finding a way for people to understand science and to feel comfortable with it through humor. And so she just downplays it and calls it science communication. That's the porous storytelling that she does, which is about herself. I'm also pointing out that she's trying to hide her face from blushing and that I'm celebrating her instead of saying, you have the worst timing ever. Oh, it's so delicious. But I was describing her to a friend of mine who's at the UN, and she's like, yes, this is exactly what we need. We need someone like this who can communicate what is important and what is powerful and what is humorous about AI to world leaders.
Oh my God.
With that being said, let's talk. No, I'm not being sweet. I'm being honest. This is what it is. Let's talk about Eben.
So he's got MyFoods, which is, and the my in MyFoods is mycelium, mushrooms, and they've made the top-selling non-meat bacon that's on the market called MyBacon. And he also had us taste My Pulled Pork, which just came out recently. They manufacture all this in upstate New York. But then he also, it was a hard pivot. We're like, how did we get here? Suddenly, then he's talking about a new concept that he said he's talking about for the first time in public: shade as a service, where a bunch of balloons or other devices would be floated way up into the atmosphere, stratosphere, and could provide shade so that the planet doesn't get as hot. And it was it was whoa. How did we get there?
He's such a
really cool.
evil genius, but for good.
Yeah.
A wonderful genius, I guess. He's truly very steampunk in some ways.
He is.
And a lot of his inventions are actually quite analog. Using mushrooms and just shade structures like Occam's razor. It's just, he's such an inventor, he's so positive and just trying to actually solve problems. One of the insights I had actually while going to PopTech that I've been thinking about a lot in regards to polarization is that I think I'm just curious what you guys think. This is a bit of a left turn. So you can cut it, Dan.
Shocking.
I think yeah, me with a weird out of left field thing. What do you guys think about this? I think the left, broadly politically, is very skeptical of technology these days, both the creators and the tech itself and how it makes money, just tech kind of soup to nuts. And the right, broadly politically, is very suspicious of science, of who are the gatekeepers, how does it get done, how does it get funded, what gets focused on. And it's good to have a certain amount of healthy skepticism, particularly because science and tech are kind of predicated on both the scientific method, which is basically like you have to prove something externally, like it can't just be believed inherently. And so skepticism is almost like part of the process for both science and technology. But in excess, a sort of like cancerous overgrowth of too much skepticism of science and technology thwarts innovation and thwarts progress. And I do think we are kind of at that place where there is just too much pessimism and skepticism. And perhaps if the left and the right broadly could look at it that way, to see in the other side the sort of flaws they might be exhibiting, perhaps we could unlock some of the deep moral pessimism that's keeping us back.
Wow, it's pretty light. I saw some of those.
I read it on a fortune cookie somewhere.
Oh, good.
They had a storyline like this in the reality TV show Below Deck. I don't know if you saw it, but it's really, there's a lot there that I think is really right and interesting. A lot of that skepticism happens digitally. It's rare that when you put those two
blaming technology, are we?
Well, let me continue.
Sorry.
Less about blaming, but more about, I think your key to that is actual in-person interactions. It's rare that two people who don't agree will refuse to listen to each other face to face. You know, they will at least politely humor each other. And if you're lucky, they're like, oh, actually, no, I don't actually disagree with that, but I feel this way because of this. It allows for more of a conversation. But I think there's an interesting piece there around unlocking that through sharing space.
Yeah, things like PopTech.
Yeah. Back to what you were saying a second ago about the left. I don't know if I would agree with that the left is not, broadly speaking, into technology. I think there is definitely a feeling of, let's learn some lessons from the social media era. And I think as far as like the anti-science stuff, I don't even think it's that folks, broadly speaking, on the right don't believe in science. I just think, I don't mean to quote Al Gore here, but I just think it's just kind of inconvenient for their interests. You know, like it's
the
just,
inventor of the internet, Al Gore.
That Al Gore, yes. Like I think climate change seems inconvenient, and like drill baby drill was a nice rallying cry in 2008, and like I don't know why we're still like the right is still chanting drill baby drill, to the point I'm going to bring us back to PopTech. Actually, there was a person on stage, a former, I don't remember his position, very, very senior leader in Tibet. He's now exiled from Tibet. He can't go back. And he talked about
former prime minister, I think.
Former prime minister of Tibet. And he talked about the key to understanding China. You have to understand Tibet to understand China. And like 2 days after the conference, I read the big New York Times article a couple days ago about China is building like the world's largest solar farm on the Tibetan plateau, which apparently solar panels work even better at high altitude. It's the same reason you get a sunburn like quicker at high altitude. So they're building this massive solar farm at high altitude to power AI and like all the other things. And meanwhile, here in America, it's like, you know, coal and drilling. And
he was so great and also so funny because he opened on stage and he was like dressed impeccably, like so impressive looking. And I think he had, I forget who he was on after, but it was just like some typical schlubby American. And he was like, I did not know we could swear. And he was like, clearly my vibes are different.
Well, we're also in Washington, D.C., where it's like
right.
Embassy here and embassy there. And
yeah, it was a good educated guess on his part to show up with like the little flag pin and the impeccable suit. But he was clearly like taken aback by his predecessor. But he was great. I really loved how he talked about the issues in Tibet. And it was like, this is what I mean when I say PopTech would be excellent for an alien, because I gave a talk about FetusGPT, about AI. AI is deeply dependent on chips. These chips that everyone talks about are very dependent on lithium. Lithium comes from Taiwan and Tibet. Well, there are lots of places, but mostly there. And there is just a gold rush. And these are the shovels of the gold. If the gold is AI, it is huge. And it was humbling to me, like listening to his talk. I was going to go on a bit afterwards. Thankfully, not right after, Jesus. But I was like, oh man, like all this cool stuff. The thing I talked to him about that night was I was like, half the talks feel like they're living in the 23rd century, and the other half feel like they're in the 15th century. Because on the one hand, we have this crazy world where I'm going to introduce my baby to the AI version of him. And then on the other hand, we have wars over resources. I thought we were past this. Like, it's so depressing to have that E.O. Wilson quote hanging over us, you know, with this like godlike technology, medieval institutions, and primordial brains. And I feel like we're at this. PopTech shows that tension, but also shows the path towards solution, which is both substantive and meta. Substantive because a lot of the talks are about different solutions we can try out, and meta because it's also in the format of PopTech is a solution, which is bringing great, smart decision makers and inventors together in physical space.
Sarah, thank you for bringing us home.
That was amazing.
I can't, I'm not going to try to say anything further than that. That would be like me going on stage after the former prime minister of Tibet. Thank you. This has been really fun. And we're going to have a deeper dive on FetusGPT coming up soon, hopefully with your co-conspirator, Daniel Schiffman. So that'll be an upcoming episode. And a few of the folks that we mentioned.
It wasn't a co-conspirator. GPT baby daddy
Right.
is the term.
GPT baby daddy.
Yeah. I should mention I do have a collaborator on the fetus part of FetusGPT.
Right.
His name's Nick Gillespie. He's great. But yeah, Daniel Schiffman's my GPT baby daddy.
Right on.
Nick's got a wonderful head of hair too. I just want to say that for the listening
Fingers
audience.
crossed for the old
gorgeous
Sarah
head of
Jr.
hair. Yeah, gorgeous head of hair.
Kwaku, Sarah, thank you. This is really fun.
Thank you, Dan. This was awesome.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, buddy.
I'm Dan Blumberg. This is Crafted, and coming soon, you'll hear more of the conversations I had with the amazing entrepreneurs at PopTech. Please subscribe and share the podcast with a friend. You can do all that and sign up for the Crafted newsletter at crafted.fm.
It's not like I'm like the Pied Piper. I'm like, come this way for a good time.